Good morning, honeys. I am Alice B. Wilder, and welcome to another live chat. I'm so excited to keep these going right now. And today I have my friend Blue on. Blue Shibari, and I'm so excited to talk to her about Shibari and meditation and all of these awesome things, sexual health, and all of that. So, hey, Blue.
Hi, hello.
I would love it if you could introduce yourself and what it is that you do to the live chat.
Hello.
And
Hi.
welcome.
Thank you. You guys can call me Blue. I basically do sexual slash sensual non-normative education. So what that means is I teach things mostly like Shibari, BDSM education, and like general kink education. And I focus basically on like the conscious action of like the psychology of it, how to do it safer because it is not a safe practice. I just want to like set that up for everyone. A lot of people say like to do it safely when it really is not safe, but we can do things to make it safer and making people aware of these things in terms of not just like our physical bodies, but also like our mental headspace and our psychological like reactions and actions that we do. So basically, that is kind of a quick summarization of what I do.
Awesome. Awesome. That is like even more beautifully put than I could have ever said about you because I'm like, she does Shibari and she's awesome and it's like meditative and like also all this other stuff. And like I can't even I can't even put my finger on everything that you have to do and like with the safety stuff and all of that that makes your workshops like work and like for to introduce people to bondage and shibari and all of that. It's incredible.
Thank
Truly incredible.
you. But I would like to know, oh, thanks. I would like to know what you do and how you describe it because I also think you're amazing. And I'm just like, my friend, she does amazing, like pussy art. And I would like to have you explain that to people who maybe are following on my end of the thing.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm Alice B. Wilder and I focus on creating portraits of genitalia, all spectrums. In neon. And it's really about just getting rid of that shame of genitalia, being not afraid to express yourself sexually, self love, kind of going on your own journey and your own self exploration. But it's really about the self love and pleasure. And the neon kind of comes in with all of the excitement of the gas and the way that the particles just light up. It's kind of the same way that I feel when I feel pleasure. And doing this project really helped me love my vulva and love my body more. So I'm hoping to do that for other people as well.
That's cool. I remember when we got together in person and you like did everything for my portrait and it was such a crazy experience for me and you made me love mine more too. Like that's so cool because it's
Cool.
like now it's like this beautiful piece of art that I literally have on stickers. I have like all these things. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. I'm really glad that you had a good experience. You're one of the only people that I've done an actual photo for. Like a lot of times, people just send me pictures through the internet, so I don't always see what's happening on the other side in that process. But with you, because we know each other so well and like we're friends in real life, like we got together and I was able to actually photograph you for the portrait. And that was a super cool experience for me too, because it was one
Yeah.
of the first times I was doing that. So
That was
thank you.
actually crazy for me too, because like usually, people are in the privacy of their own home and they're like taking their own shots and you give them tips, right, on like angles and there's like a feedback loop of little here, little there, try that one
Right.
again. And literally I felt like it was a photo shoot for my own vulva and like someone else was doing it. And your camera, you were like up in my business. And I've never had that experience with someone before where it's like super like safe environment, like totally platonic, like really professional, like we have a goal in mind, right?
Mhm.
But yet again, like I'm like super exposed and like all my bits are out. And it was just a weird thing for me because no one has ever been in that space with like that like goal in mind or that energy.
Yeah.
And so it was just like super silly, super fun, but also like such a new experience where I was like, I don't know like how to feel about this. And then the picture came out. And so that was like a really awesome thing too.
It was really fun. And we I think you tied yourself up a little bit for that too. So that was like a really
Yeah.
fun aspect of it. I
Yeah.
still need to work on that actually. I forgot about that part. So
Yeah, let's finish the photo.
yeah, so I mean that was the first time you had someone else take pictures of your vulva. Have you ever taken pictures of your vulva, like for yourself?
I mean, not technically for myself. They've been kind of requested. And when that happened, I was just kind of like, okay, yeah, for sure. Like, I'm super into it, right? But exactly, like, how do you make it appealing? Like, what angle? Like, it did take me a few shots before I was like satisfied for like sending one off. And
Mhm.
that's like, we're used to taking selfies. We're used to like finding like how we look and all our angles. But when it comes to that, I feel like that's something that's not normalized quite yet for
Mhm.
one to do on themselves. Like obviously like asking for it, but like making it like artistic and pretty. It's just different. I feel like there's definitely more of a stigma towards vulvas than towards like dick pics.
Yeah, yeah, I think I totally feel that. There is, and I wonder if it's like, well, like the penis is like out. So you're always seeing it. If you have a penis, you're like it's always there. You can always look at it, but it's such a mind trip to like try to look at your vulva. You like actually need either the camera or a mirror to do so.
Or
And so
both.
like what? What was
Or
that?
both.
Or both. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. But yeah, like I actually, after one of the last live chats I did last week, we were talking about a 28-day mirror challenge.
Oh my God.
And I started today with my camera and I was like, I'm going to take a picture of my vulva like once a day for a whole month and see how it goes. And then just like
Yeah.
see how it changes or what it looks like during different parts of the month. But also to like normalize looking at it and seeing it regularly without it just being like a once in a while, let me gaze at it, just like see how it's doing, or like when I only have an ingrown hair or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
and understanding like the
mhm,
realness of it because when we are exposed to that type of like visual imagery, it's usually like some sort of like bullshit diagram in a book, and they do
yeah,
not look the same because everyone's is so different. And that's kind of what I learned from your art and your portraits. Like I'm such a creeper and such a stalker. Like every time you post something new, I go and I look because I'm actually interested in seeing like the different types that are like foreign to mine.
yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
I seriously had no idea until like the first two or three people sent me theirs because they were so vastly different from the one I did for myself. And I was just like,
Yeah.
oh my God, like how beautiful is this structure? Like so different with the like inner labia coming out or like more like orchid looking. It's
Yeah.
very
Or
cool.
even positioning, like if is it like front facing or is it like more bottom facing? Because you just normalize like your own.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I don't know, they're all so different. And one of the other chats I was talking with somebody about how that's like based on culture in some ways, like depending on
Oh, really?
yeah, like where you're from. I had a conversation with a gynecologist here in Valladolid actually that was like, I've had people come to me from like the Netherlands and like England, and they feel so self-conscious about their vulvas because
Uh-huh.
they don't look like what the like whatever the like diagram vulva looks
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, the
So
drawing.
I was so interested in that. I was like, I feel like I need to see this, like a full spectrum of like where you're from and like all of these different vulvas so we can see what that looks like. It would
That's
be amazing.
amazing. I had no idea the things you don't know.
Yeah. I mean, if all of our fingerprints are different, then all of our vulva prints are probably different too.
Okay, that's a new thing, vulva prints. There's actually, when you were saying if you wanted to chat about Burning Man a little bit, actually at Burning Man, there was a camp this year. I didn't get to go, but I
Mhm.
ran into a few people who went, and some people from my camp went. And there was a
Cool.
camp literally dedicated to like genital art, like but playa style. So basically, they would like paint your bits, and you'd have to like squat down on a piece of paper, and then that's what you and then like take it and like give it to you to like frame it, and they were like super abstract because obviously like people are moving, you don't know what to do, but it's like interesting because you may not know what it is at the first glance, but someone would have to like explain that to you.
Yeah. Wow. That's so interesting. Oh my God. I've been dying to go to Burning Man for years and I just haven't made it yet, but it's like on my radar and I'm hoping
Yeah,
to bring a neon there someday. Like that's my big goal is to see like a neon vulva
that
in
would be
the middle
so
of the
cool.
desert. That would be so sick. But that camp sounds amazing. I think we need more of that.
Yeah.
So tell me about your Burning Man experience because you brought your Shibari with you to Burning Man, right?
Yeah, I did. And that was actually like a huge mind trip for me because I was planning on tying there, and I even had like a few people who wanted to tie with me, and there was a few
Mhm.
people and like accounts that like I knew were going to Burning Man that I hadn't
Yeah.
met in person that I reached out to do some tying, and one of them actually was like so close to me. But this year was really tough. This year was one of the hardest years I've ever done, and I've gone for quite a few years. And it was just the heat was really bad, and the storms were super bad, and so it was really challenging. So the first day I went out and like looked at structures and like I found a ton of them that would be amazing for it. And I even found camps that like were doing it.
Mhm.
But in terms of like my personal experience, I went early to build. And so that's a lot of time in the sun. That's not a lot of like shade. That's not a lot of like rest. And so I was pretty
Mhm.
tired the first few days. And then when one of the people came and like everyone was starting to come in since I came early, the weather was just horrible. And all the structures that we had, I literally had one amazing one across the way where these aerialists who were performing at Temple, that was their camp. So it was like this huge structure. And I made friends with them and like got the go ahead to use the structure, and it was like this pulley that you could like lift and go down as this massive thing. And it was really cool like chatting to them, and we talked a little bit about like what we wanted to do, what shapes we wanted to do. But what ended up happening is like the weather was non-permitting like in the structures that I was at because it was super hot, and all of these things are made of metal. And so it wouldn't be fun for the bottom because we'd have to have goggles in the dust storm, and it wouldn't be like it just wouldn't have been fun. And so we were like kind of testing out which days that we could do it. And the only times that we were able to do it would be like in the middle of the night. And so we just decided we're just gonna have fun and we'll just do it later. And so I got some contacts, but I met some people, like the universe always like brings people. I met some people just like randomly who have like their own practices that do like really cool shibari too. So after the play, we like connected and exchanged information. And so it was really cool in terms of like meeting people in person of
Mhm.
like online accounts that I guess you can follow. But just
Mhm.
for me personally, like I didn't find a space and my bottoms weren't comfortable in the environment that was presented, which is cool because it's really nice to kind of understand your own limits, right? And kind of just like leave that ego check at the door. Like, no matter how much you want to do something and no matter how much you want to like force something, you really do have to listen to your bottoms. You really do have to listen to yourself to make it a comfortable experience because in itself, it can be uncomfortable. And if you add these types of elements and if you stress it too much and if you try to force it too much, like that's when things can become like a little bit dangerous in my point of view, or just things just tend to go wrong. And
Mhm.
so it was kind of disappointing, but at the same time, it was really exciting because there was a lot more talk about it. Like people were wanting to. We like did like the consent negotiation and just decided on both parts that it just wasn't going to happen for us. And that was interesting. And just by having these conversations, like the universe brought me like a couple different types of people where I could connect maybe to do things in the future. So I'm still excited to hopefully do it again. This year was just tough though. It was just
Yeah.
really hard, like environmentally.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw some pictures from it and it seemed like everything was like covered in so much dust and like
Yeah,
the storm
it was a
seemed
lot.
pretty intense. But
Yeah.
that's really interesting. That actually brings up an interesting question. Can you talk a little bit about the relationship between bottoms and tops when it comes to like shibari and working with somebody and like tying somebody up?
Yeah, of course. It depends. It really does depend. For example, it really depends on kind of the relationship you have going into it. For example, like if you're friends, you already kind of have a closeness or a basis of trust, or they kind of maybe understand what it is that you do, or maybe your style just by being around you, like seeing things or supporting you or talking to you, right?
Mhm.
If it's someone coming in that's like completely external, trying for a new time, their relationship is more, I think, at the beginning information based, like educational. It's really important to be like, okay, plan everything out. This is what we're going to do. And it's a lot of back and forth of like, how are you feeling? What is something that you want to try to feel? What is a shape that you maybe want to try to achieve? Is there something specific that you want to explore? It's a lot of like question asking, and then kind of like a dance, like depending on the response, you offer this on the table, depending on that. Versus when I've tied with friends, they kind of just trust me. We do like a basic thing aside from the like consent negotiation, but depending on like what we're actually going to create,
Mhm.
it's basically kind of way more simplified. And like, yeah, I just want you to like be creative or go with the flow, or like I trust you with like you have like creative for your creative expression, like just go for it. And then there's kind of the more intimate part, like say you have like a partner that you're seeing, or maybe like romantically or sexually, and that's a whole different thing, because I've had like two different kind of instances where one was super supportive and we did it all the time together, and like equally like we really loved like participating in this, and it just became kind of like I have this idea and it's like, okay, let's do it. And we already knew each other's like limits, we already have like talked about that type of consent thing, and we would just do like a quick check-in, like, okay, do you have anything that changes? How are you feeling? Do you have any limitations in your body today? And all the other like hardcore things or deeper questions we already kind of like filled out together before, in terms of what we knew about each other. And so that's really cool, because it's just a lot of exploration, and it's a lot of trust, and it's a lot of intimacy. And that's when I feel like I can really flow and like push my own limits and my creativity and push their limits, because I know them so well. And on the other hand, I had a partner that wasn't so supportive of it. And like sometimes we would do it together because they knew it was important to me, but it wasn't really a complete desire on their part. And so
Mhm.
it kind of makes me scale back a little and like do things like very minimally, and like, okay, like, how are you doing? Checking in. And that can be kind of complex, because you have this intimate relationship, but then you feel like it can't like blossom in this space. And so
Mhm.
like mentally, there's like a little bit of a blockage there. And so that's super interesting. And then I have bottoms that I tie with frequently. There's a girl who's my friend. Her name's Yoko. And if you probably see her a lot on her profile, because she really likes being tied. And I really like being tying. And we like have a really good energy together. And we kind of just like bounce ideas off of each other. And
Cool.
she's just like really cool. Like we're friends in real life. And so it's interesting because we're friends, and then we've tied together a lot. And so we kind of, it's in between like that new person and that friend person and like an intimate partner. It's kind of like closer to an intimate partner, but it's not like sexual.
Mhm.
So it's basically depending on like their experience and their experience with you, because you can have someone that has tons of experience bottoming, but every person who ties has a completely different style in terms of how they touch you, how they talk to you, how you guys will communicate, what they like to do. Like I really like inversions and like face stuff and gags and like just like toes and fingers and like weird things. And some people really like, just like straight up making shapes and making beautiful art and how having everything symmetrical.
Mhm.
And so you really have to kind of test and like see who you click with and see what style is yours. And I've personally bottomed for a few people, and there's some people in my experience as being tied where I feel like the session was really good and I experienced a lot of emotion, but maybe the rigor, the person tying wasn't as experienced as others. And so like it wasn't like beautiful to me, but like I felt like the ropes, and I had like my own personal experience that I really enjoyed. And then I've chatted with other people who are super skilled, and I just like didn't feel any connection, and just kind of felt like they
Mhm.
were just like drawing on me and like doing patterns, and it wasn't the type of like rope work in Shibari that like I personally connect a lot with. And so what I tell people is that the hard limits, or not the hard limits, sorry, like the hard skills that you have, which is basically like, can you see if you did it well or not? Like, is it good or is it bad? Did it do its function? Yes or no? Is it safe? Yes or no? Like things that are measurable, like those are called hard skills, and then
Mhm.
things that aren't measurable and like aren't like tangible to like say if you did it well or not. Things like empathy, communication, how you create the ambiance and the energy and how you make people feel. Those are like the soft skills. And so you
Mhm.
kind of have to see what balance works for you the best. Like I personally enjoy tying with people who have better soft skills or focus more on their soft skills versus like just doing patterns because I'm a human and I want to be cared about. But everybody's different. Some people just want to have someone really awesome tie them in this crazy looking thing and take a picture and like that's what they like. And
Mhm.
so like your relationship with bottoms, it's kind of complex. Like everyone is so individual based off of like likes and needs, but like a tip is like if you're going to tie, try to find some people who are interested and that you click with and try to do it frequently because that's when like you can really get like the juices flowing and really explore these things versus trying to like stay within their structured like limits and all these things that you guys have consented to together. So it's
Mhm.
just it's variable like how every portrait is different for you, like every
Yeah.
bottom is different for me.
That's so interesting. And I can imagine I've tied with you and I think one other person. And even just the difference between the two approaches is different. And it's like I know that the experience is going to be different. Like I see a lot in your work where you are very embracing with people and like you can like I can almost like tell that connection that you have with people through the videos that you post and like through seeing that work that you do. And I think that like talking about the soft skills, that is like really the connection part. I think that's super
Mhm.
important when you're especially when you're doing like something that can be dangerous, but like done in such a safe and beautiful way. Like it's really cool. I
Exactly.
I was wondering about how so you've been tied a few times, but you tie yourself also quite frequently, and that's kind of how you got started, right?
Well, actually, I got started like by looking at it visually, and then I went and like bottomed, and then I became like a rigger. And then once I felt like comfortable in my own skills, I began tying myself and like self suspensions and self ties. And like to be honest, like usually when I time myself, it's because it's like very anxiety based. And so like usually when I set, like put out content of me doing like a self tie, like in the background, like off of social media, like Instagram versus reality, usually they're like anxiety based moments where I'm feeling
Mhm.
super overwhelmed. Like I feel like things are out of control in my life, or I feel like I need some sort of contention, or just I need to like create a space for me. That's usually what's going on in the background when I'm doing like a self tie. Very few times am I self tying to like explore things, like to create new stuff because it's very limiting in terms
Okay.
of like creating a tie and like testing it out because you can't have your hands behind your back, you have to be like kind of low, you have to like certain security measures when you're doing a self tie, and so they're kind of like just like help me, I need contention type moments, and for me that's usually kind of what happens.
Mhm. So you use it in like a meditative way and like in your because you do enter into a subspace, right? You're still a top, but do you reach that subspace when you're tying yourself?
I personally don't, just
Okay.
because I can't fully like let go. I can't fully just like let my mind expand and kind of become that like spacey person that I do when I go into rope space because I am the top, but I'm also the bottom. So I still have that responsibility to keep myself safe. So I'm just like
Yeah.
kind of like in the middle where it's more of me in my personal experience, focusing on my breathing, focusing on like how it feels. Like, does this hurt? Does it hurt good? Do I want it to hurt? Like,
Mhm.
what do I need? Do I need to go up? Do I need to go down? Just breathe. Things like that. Like, I can't really let myself go because
Okay.
it's not in my best interest. It's not safe. I still have to like really be focused and really be super present. It's a different kind of meditation where makes you be super present and it focuses more on like that breath work instead of like that
Mhm.
mind space, head space stuff.
Mhm. I feel like if I was going to compare it to something in my life, trying to understand that, it would be like how I feel when I'm trying to do like that yoga position crow, where you're like balancing
Yeah.
yourself on your two hands and you're like trying to hold yourself, but you
Not
have to
smacking
like
your face.
yeah, not fall on your face,
Yeah.
but you're like
Exactly.
so
It's like,
present.
yeah, you're like working on things, like you're trying to be really present. She's like, okay, this goes here, okay, but like you
Mhm.
can't just be like, oh, okay, like go and like savasana. No, like you really have to be paying attention.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. That's super interesting. I'm so curious about what you do. It's like really, truly, I love it. It's so fascinating.
Thank you.
Okay, so trying to think of what else I wanted to ask you about this. Um,
About the self-tying or just in general?
just in general, just in general. How has Shibari like influenced your personal like sexual life or your like sexual experience with yourself or like even understanding yourself
Yeah,
better?
it complicated things, honestly, because I really liked it.
Mhm.
And not a lot of people do it, and not a lot of people do it well or well enough for me to feel comfortable for them tying me or an experience level that I want slash need. And so it complicates things. I really do try to keep my personal practice of Shibari separate from like my personal like sexual life. I have mixed it a few times in previous relationships. Like one, it was super complicated. It caused a few issues because that person wasn't really into it, and I had to sit down with that person and kind of negotiate. Like, okay, I need this. X amount of times a month, or I would need to participate in this with you. Like, it's super important to me, and like, I do it, and I would love to share it with you. And so we ended up coming to agreement. That agreement never really like came to fruition. It caused kind of a lot of things because I wanted to involve it in a way that it just wasn't possible. And then when that happened, like I didn't feel supported. I didn't feel seen. I didn't feel like it was beneficial to me. And I felt that I did support that person and what their passions were and what they liked and their desires and their sexual exploration. And that person actually came up to me later and like thanked me for opening them up sexually and experimenting with things. And it was interesting to receive that compliment, I guess. But it was kind of like in my head, like, what about me? Like, I don't feel the same way. I feel like I went two steps back. I felt like I was always in the role of teaching,
Mhm.
and I don't want to do that in my personal life. Like, I want to be equals. And
Mhm.
so that was really interesting in my personal life. And then I had that other partner that was like super supportive and it was really fun. And we did it more as like a play space where it was more like workshopping and me tying and like us talking about it and like seeing what we liked and like disliked, not really in terms of like a sexual sense, because like I said, I would like to receive as well. And that person had no basis of tying at all. So like if we tried it one time and my mind was like, oh, that's super wrong, or like, oh, that's dangerous, like, okay, stop, like, you need to do this, or else you're going to hurt me. And so we weren't ever really able to get into like a sexy time space.
Yeah.
Um, Even though there was like that support, it was just like a whole different level. So I try to keep those kind of separate because I just did see that like it complicated things. Maybe one day if I meet like a rigger, like, and we end up like dating or having like some sort of relationship, that'd be cool to explore. It's just I haven't had that happen yet, unfortunately, but it's fine because I like other things and there's other things that are important to me. But in regards to the non-technical stuff, it's really helped me in my relationships. Just doing this for so long and talking about what I like and being okay externalizing like my needs and my wants or how I like things or what I don't like or setting limits or type of communication. It's really helped me like
Mhm.
level up on the type of relationships I've had. Like I feel like the first one I told you about was like over here, and like the other ones kind of like slowly leveled up based
Mhm.
off of like how I set boundaries and how I interacted. So those are kind of like the skills that this world taught me that I
Yeah.
could take into my personal relationships. And it's so funny that like you ask me that because I feel super comfortable and like open, and it's really easy for me to externalize like my needs, my wants, my limits in a sexual space. And you think because like I do this all the time or I have all this practice at it, that it would be easy to externalize my needs, my wants, and my limits and like the default worlds, like the vanilla space, I guess you could call it,
Yeah.
it's still super challenging. Like there's times still where I'm just like, why did I agree to that? Or like, I know I don't want that.
Mhm.
Or like a situation, like I know I should say no to something, like simple as like at the store, right? And I don't. And in my head, I'm like, I don't want that. I don't want that. Say that you don't want that. Say that you want that. Say that you like, and I just can't sometimes. And so it's super funny because it's like twist turned, I feel, from a
Yeah.
lot of other people, maybe.
Hmm.
What
That is
about you?
really
How do
interesting.
you feel about like the way that you communicate, like for sexy time versus like the default world?
Um, I feel like I completely understand what you're saying with that. I think that through this project, I've not only like communicated with people in this very delicate space of like wanting to create work for them, but also I can't push people. Like I can't sell to them and be like, "Hey, did you send me your pictures yet?" Or like I can't like push them in the process. It's their own process, and they have to kind of I have to be patient with that and understand that it's totally up to them. But in doing this work and like meeting people and talking about stuff, I've also explored sexually and that like through experiencing like threesomes or like different group play, I've been able to recognize like whether I was able to communicate my boundaries well or like certain times like I may have gone along with something and I was like, you know what, after the fact, like I'm not going to do that again, you know, but like I have to try it a few times to figure out if I like it or like what it is and how to communicate those boundaries.
Yeah.
And I've gotten a lot better at being able to recognize that or even say to myself, like, oh, you know what? Like, actually being touched this way doesn't do anything for me. And I'd appreciate it if, like, I prefer it if you touch me in this other way. And like, here,
Hmm.
like, it makes me like narrow that stuff down. But as far as real life goes, I still have a hard time with like
I
literally at the
know.
grocery store the other day, we were looking at like a cake. Like I was cooking dinner for somebody and we were like, oh, like we can get some dessert. And then I'm like literally in the bakery aisle looking at this large cake and with cookies on top and everything. And I'm like, this cake looks beautiful. Like we should get it. It's not that expensive. And then on the other hand, I'm like, I don't know if we really need this cake. But then like you were gonna get this cake anyway. Like, it doesn't matter. It's just like, I don't know if I needed it or whatever. It's still difficult to like understand where those boundaries are. But if nothing else, I can see the progress from like when I started to now and
Oh my gosh, me
how much,
too.
yeah, like how much I've learned about myself, how comfortable I am. Like, even doing these live chats, I wanted to do them like a year ago. And I just knew I wasn't ready for it to like actually sit on camera live. But having recorded myself, like I have, I think 11
Naked.
videos now naked and like just talking about stuff, like I can see the progress that I've made in my own comfort level with my body, with myself, like even just with the way that I speak about things or like that kind of stuff.
It's
So,
so true. And like it's amazing because I've known you for a long time and I've known you and like been witness to your process and like your sexual evolution. And then sometimes we talk and you're like, oh, XYZ happened. I'm just like, girlfriend, like I do not even recognize the person from 3, 4 years ago. And it's so
right.
cool because some people just kind of like give up and like, okay, well, this is like how I am or who I am. And that's kind of like when all these feelings of insecurity come in and like all these feelings that we have towards our bodies and like our relationship styles or even like our actual relationships that we're in. Like we just kind of like, all right, this is it. And we like settle in and kind of like give up, I guess, versus like, okay, let's see what do I want?
Mhm.
Okay, like let's do it. And that's really cool. Like I totally respect you because I've seen
Oh,
like your process, even with like your project of Genital Electric, like it's super awesome.
thanks. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, I've been in a relationship for like 11 years and it's at that like moment where have you read Untamed by Glennon Doyle?
I haven't yet.
Okay. There's a part in that book where she talks about how her new relationship with Abby becomes like they are like two different colors. Like she's like one of them is sky blue and the other one is or midnight blue and the other one is like pearl white and together they make like a sky blue. And it's that like moment where you like become that like together that one color. And it was so perfectly described the moment where she like had to separate themselves again and realize that like she will always be midnight blue and the other one will always be pearl white, but they have to be able to like hold themselves together but not just collide into each other to become that sky blue. And after being in a relationship for so long, like we love each other so deeply, but there's like you're changing together and like you still have to explore yourself and figure out like what it is because who you are at 30 is not the same person that you were at 21. So
No, not
it's like
or
we're like
29.
new people, yeah, trying to figure each other out again. And it's like, yeah, it's like figuring out what it is that makes them tick and like what makes people happy, like where the pleasure is and all of that. You can't
That's so
expect to
funny that
have
you
the
say
same
that.
relationship. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's so funny that you mentioned that because I was introduced to um, this guru, his name's Sad Guru, like a few years back. And I like to just kind of
No.
follow his content still because it's a different way of thinking about things where it seems like obviously common sense and so simple, but when it's put in a certain vocabulary, like it literally just makes so much sense to me. And
Mhm.
I saw this thing the other day and it was really interesting because it was literally talking about what you're saying about being in types of relationships. We're saying like this person is aligned and this person is aligned. And
Mhm.
if they are focused on the other line, like scientifically, they'll go like this, they'll collide and they'll go opposite ways, right? And if
Mhm.
this person focus on themselves and their growth and their journey, and this person focus on themselves and their journey, they can go together parallel for infinity. And like
Mhm.
that made so much sense in my brain because my brain is more like a practical brain. And I was like, duh, obviously, but it's those kinds of things, right? It's like the
Yeah.
self work. And that comes along with like, what do you like? What are your kinks? What are your fetishes? Like, how do you like to be touched? Okay, if it doesn't work for that person, all right, like it's not for that person. And that's just something that I think sometimes we lose perspective because as much as I would like to have a partner who does amazing rigging so I can experience what I want to experience, like the reality of it is like maybe that's not my journey, you know, maybe
Mhm.
it will align one time, but like right now, it's just not my journey. Like I just need to focus on like what I'm doing.
Mhm. Yeah. Wow, that's super interesting the way you put that. And I feel like the way you describe that with the
What was
two
it me
straight
with that guru?
lines.
So
I know, but still. I feel that way with the Glennon Doyle thing. I'm like, I can understand colors so much better
yeah,
than like,
lines.
yeah. No, but like the way that you said it makes total sense. I think and I like, and recognizing that like, okay, we're at this point and we love each other, but like we need different things or like we need to figure out where
Mhm.
we're at now and how that relates to each other. And that just like has strengthened our communication together and being able to like sit and have a conversation about something in a productive way and like be able to like talk about what it is, like what the desires are on both sides. But
Mhm.
I had to take like a couple of years to really focus on myself and say, like, I've actually never looked at myself in this way and like what it is that I want or like how my body even feels pleasure or like what is it that I appreciate about my body because I never really took that time for myself until the last couple of years doing the project.
Also, I think it's super normal to be so excited to like share with someone, like, and be in that type of relationship and feel all those feelings, and that like you really are focused on the other person sometimes. Like, sometimes it feels like how they're feeling is more important than what you're feeling, or like their needs. Like, you want to like help them so much and do these things that like sometimes you forget about your needs, you know? And I feel like I'm not the only one here who feels maybe sometimes they have gone too far into that and maybe kind of like lost themselves in that sphere of
Mhm.
not sacrificing because in the moment you really want to, but really it is kind of sacrificing when like you come first, you know, and it's hard to kind of go backwards. Like once you're there, it's kind of hard to realize that and like take it back a step and like bring the focus back home because
Mhm.
you've already crossed that line. You're already over there, like doing things and loving that person. And how are you feeling? And I want to do this for you, even when it comes to sexual stuff. Like that's why sometimes when you're in like sexual relationships, like sometimes it becomes like that performative aspect of like, no, I just don't want to hurt their feelings. Or like, I want to make them feel good. Or like, I know they like this, but it's what about me?
Yeah.
Why aren't they thinking that way about me?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I totally get that. And I feel like with that and like being able to figure out those boundaries, it also allows you to like, if you do cross that line and you like realize it, and then you can like look within yourself and understand like, oh, what is it
Hmm.
about that that actually makes me uncomfortable? Like, is it something that happened in my life? Is it something that I like was brought up with? And then you can like
That's a whole nother
rationally,
wormhole. Yeah.
yeah, but like once you can recognize that, you can rationally realize like whether or not that still works for you or not. And it's like, does this thought pattern actually help
Benefit
me?
me.
Or
Yeah.
yeah, or is it actually like closing me up or like making me feel like this for some reason and why? And
Yeah,
that
that's
has come
right.
up for me a lot in like dealing with certain things that like I grew up from my parents. I'm also an only child, so like we have that in common,
Child
and
play. Yeah.
it's so intense sometimes with the like parental expectations and like what they want
Yeah.
for you, or like what even their sexual past and like a relationship and trauma is like put on you.
Like, these mosquitoes are
Shit.
crazy. No, I totally agree. And like the whole thing about, being an only child is really crazy because it doesn't really, I feel like I wasn't really like aware of like how much it affected me.
Mhm.
And it's not like it affected me like negatively or positively, like in terms of like the basic stereotypes of only children. Like I really don't think that I was spoiled with things. And I think it was more like an economic barrier that my parents had when I was younger. But I was really, really spoiled in terms of like attention and love. And I grew like this sense of freedom that I think is super beneficial to me now, but also can be a little bit destructive in my own ways of thinking because for example, like I feel like I'm a very free person. Like I want to live here, I go live there. I want to live there, I go live there. I want to do this, I go do that. And my only responsibility is like right now I have a dog. That's
Mhm.
it. And
Mhm.
it's interesting because I've had several people say this to me where it's like, oh, but like you're free, like it doesn't matter. Like, oh, you're so easygoing, you can like do what you want, go where you want. It's like, okay, yes, but like I am also a person who does like being partnered or in a relationship, but it has to be with a certain individual that respects that about me, that
Mhm.
respects that even if I am in a partnership, like I do need certain senses of freedom. Why? Because I am used to being alone. When I was a child, who played with me? I played with me, right?
Right.
When I had a problem, who talked to me that I could really go to? I talked to me. When I was an adult and I had issues and maybe my friends couldn't relate, like I figured my shit out on my own, not because I'm strong and this and that. It's because I didn't have that choice of like some other instance or person to like lean on. And also sharing wasn't a thing that I did. Like I never had to share anything. Maybe I didn't have a lot of things, but I never had to share it or I never had to stand up for myself in like a sibling argument. So
Yeah.
a lot of the things that other people had experience with for a long time, like I'm learning as an adult.
Yeah.
And other things that maybe they didn't have experience at a long time, like they're learning as an adult. And
Mhm.
so it's kind of like a mixed, matchy thing where that
Mhm.
totally bleeds into how you have communication, how you react in an argument, how you express yourself, how your sexual interaction is. Like all of these things bleed into it and are so important because me as a person in a relationship, Yes, I am very free. Yes, I have like my own thing and I can do my own stuff. But yes, I do need a lot of attention, right? Because that's what I'm used to.
Mhm.
Yes, I do need a lot of love and care because yes, that's what I'm used to. Yes, I do need to externalize like maybe I'm not that great at sharing certain stuff in my personal space, or maybe I'm not as open with my problems because I never had the option to not be, So it's
Yeah.
kind of like de-learning, unlearning these things and learning like new skills and being more vulnerable, more open, more
Yeah.
XYZ. And like, I don't know how it is with you because you've been in a relationship for so long. Like, how have that impacted like your sexual life or your relationships in the past?
I definitely feel the same as like about that as you do with
Right?
that. Like I always turned to myself. Like for a long time, even as a kid, I was like going home, no one was there, like latchkey kid, totally my life. Like
Yeah.
hanging out by myself, playing. Like I I had like two imaginary friends growing up when I was little, and one of them was nice and the other one was not nice. And it was like those were the like it was myself. I was like literally trying to figure out between myself like what I felt about things, and I think that that is something that I had to unlearn. Like there's that empathy and like connecting with people and like interpersonal skills because there was no sibling to deal with. Like there it was just my
Mhm.
parents, and my parents are like my only
Adult.
real, yeah,
Yeah.
and my only real like like intimate view of a relationship because even though I like spent time at other people's houses as a kid, I only caught glimpses of like what that family life was like. So it wasn't until I like got into a relationship that was much more long term and I was able to like see how a different family operates or like see how he relates with his sister and like those kinds of things. And as a kid, I always wanted a brother. Like I always wanted that older brother or like sibling to have that like there's always it seems in like really good sibling relationships that like friendship is so deep that it's like I've only felt that with like my closest friends or like with my
Mhm.
partner. That
And
like
that takes
definitely.
time. That takes
Yeah.
time and experience. And like, that's not just like, oh yeah, we were born together.
Exactly, yeah. And that has translated into like our relationship, our sexual life, like understanding that like the way that he sees things is probably different than the way that I see things because of that upbringing. And for sure the sharing thing has come up. Like that has been something that I've had to work on and understand and like while our relationship is like in flux and we're having conversations about like what works for us and what doesn't, it allows us to like explore that and kind of figure out like, oh, if I have a threesome with somebody, like what's that like when it's a female versus a male, and like what is the dynamic there, and like how am I feeling with another female around, or like sharing my partner versus how does my partner feel about sharing me. And it's such
Hmm.
an interesting, like, I don't know, it's interesting to work through because it's then like I'm journaling about it and trying to like figure out how I feel and get to the bottom of the feelings because I'm like my own investigative reporter.
Right. And it's so interesting because it's different when you're a child and talking about sharing toys, and then you're an adult and you're talking about sharing people.
Yeah,
And that's just like a huge thing. Like I'm also like working on my sharing skills. I've recently have like started exploring like ethical non-monogamy, but obviously unpartnered. And so it's interesting doing that whole sharing business. And when you deal with like the sexual instances and there's energy and emotions and communication, like it is super super challenging just because like it's such a new concept for me, and also working like on how you communicate that and like processing jealousy or just
yeah,
any of those instances, especially when it comes when you're talking about deeper things and more personal things like kinks and fetishes and like how they go together. And then you're talking about sharing people on top of that, or like having threesomes on top of that, or opening up your relationships on top of that. Like all of this really does kind of like bleed in.
hmm Yeah, absolutely. And I think also like like jealousy, for instance, like there I may have been jealous of like my friends when I was younger, but there wasn't ever that like sibling rivalry. There was never that
Mhm.
like even the things that I see within my like nephews and like the way that like kids or like my
Right.
friends' kids and like how they interact with each other. And I'm like, it's so fascinating to me to watch kids like from that perspective of like, oh, like this is what the sibling life is like at times. And like
Yeah.
you are like fighting for attention and you are like like trying to learn how to share your toys or your clothes or whatever it is. And yeah, it's like something that it's funny to like try to learn it as an adult, I feel like, and
Oh my
recognize it because
gosh.
you're so aware of it too. And you're like, well, like, how do I feel about how I feel? And there's that like layer.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because it also depends like how it interacts with like how you react to those things. For example, I was just like casually seeing someone who was already in a relationship and they're opening themselves up to like practicing E&M, and then I came back from Burning Man and kind of like got broken up with because of whatever their dynamic was. They just decided like not to pursue it. And so being the third in that is interesting because like obviously like, you feel a connection, you're like involved, but like going into it, you already know that there's a different layer, there's like a more realistic approach to it. And so I was just like, okay, cool, thanks. And I feel like that comes from also being an only child and like always not having to share. And so I never had to like fight for things. Things were just kind of like mine, I
Mhm.
guess. So now that I'm here and like I'm trying this whole sharing thing and that happens, it's just kind of like, okay, release, whatever. And because there's just like no point. There's no point to it. And I've also been, I guess, conditioned to just like doing that, I guess, like being a little bit more indifferent about things instead of like having a back and forth and a battle about those types of sharing instances, just because I was never exposed to it. It's like, how would you even start? And like, why would you even start?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I completely understand that. That's really interesting.
I know, right? Even
It's
I was like, all
really,
right,
it's a
that
mind trip.
that's a new thing for me. Yeah, I was like, learning about that about myself. And it's not that I don't care. It's just like there's no point in caring at this point.
Hmm.
Like it's just
Hmm.
not beneficial.
Yeah, interesting. Very interesting. I get the indifference part because I'm much more like uh, matter of fact about some things where it's like, well, like this is how I feel about it, and like that's just it. Or like sometimes I'll be like, oh,
Exactly.
like maybe I can dig into this a little bit more and figure out what it is that I like about this, or like why, or like why do I feel this way about something? And yeah, it's
Yeah,
interesting to dig into those layers of feelings. It can be murky sometimes, but like I feel
I
that
know.
even going through those murky waters is like very, it's good, like in the long run.
Yeah, for example, like after traveling so much, I mean, you traveled a bunch too, like it just became kind of my motto, like, okay, so this is happening now. Like this is just my reality now. Like this is just happening now. Like
Yep.
okay, like I can't change that. And I
Mhm.
think that that translates a lot into dealing with different types of people who have different types of like interests and likes because you can never force that. I tried in a relationship to impose my likes and my needs sexually on the other person and it did not go well.
Yeah.
And at least for me, like I felt horrible, and not in terms of like me trying to do it. It's just like it just wasn't received in a way that like made me feel seen and important. So that's just what's happening now.
Mhm. Interesting. Very interesting. Damn. We're at like 53 minutes. This is
Oh
amazing.
no way. No
Yeah.
way.
Yeah,
Went
yeah.
by super fast.
Um,
Yes, did you have any
so
other questions?
I'm trying to think. I don't think so. I think this was just an amazing chat. Like it was super
I
flowy
know.
and
We just like didn't ask any of the questions.
well, it's not meant to be like an interview, really. It's just like
Yeah.
I think that you're an interesting person and I like to hear what you have to say about these things and we can just like flow in and out of a conversation and it'll go somewhere. And I think that it went to a really interesting place.
Right. Like all of our fucked up problems. I love it.
I love it too. I love you so much. Do you want to let everyone know where they can find you? And then we'll just kind of end this and I'm
Yeah,
seeing you
for
this
sure.
Saturday, so I'm just excited
I
about
know.
that.
We're seeing so soon. Yay! So if you guys are interested in anything like kink education, shibari education, or if you just have like any questions about that kind of world, like I'm always reading my messages, I'm always answering my emails, that type of thing. So I really love interacting with the community. You can catch me on shibarimx.com. So that's like shortened for Mexico, shibarimx.com. Instagram at La Virgen Blue, and it has 3 E's. And on TikTok, I just got my account restored, so I know it was hard. I'm back on TikTok at La Virgen Blue with just 1 E. And if you're interested in watching videos on YouTube, I have a few free like tying tutorials. I have a Pornhub review that's super good, and I also have some kink dating do's and don'ts and advice, and I do give like a recommendation on about the app Field, which is for kinky dating or like polyamory, things like that. That's under my old account. I still have to like do the whole process of changing the name, but it's Dope Ropes Shibari. So that's basically where you can find like me and my content. And if you're interested in actually like doing an at-home practice and getting more resources, I've just opened up a Patreon and I'm really loving it because I can just kind of like dump resources, dump blogs and experiences and photos. And so I'm actually going to stop posting so much stuff on Instagram just because of censorship, and all of that stuff is going on Patreon. So you can find me at Patreon at Love Your Team Blue with 1 E. And I have tons of resources and things that you can download at different levels and just kind of like work through in your own kink practice.
That's awesome. And I think we should definitely do this again. Definitely talk about censorship because we've both been dealing with a lot of that.
Oh my
And we
gosh,
can
I
talk
spent
about
hours.
praying
Let's do
on
that.
like all of this other stuff. I think that this was super good, and I would love to have you back here again to do this.
Thank
And
you.
I'm so excited. Patreon, I don't know if this is recent, but like there was a new thing about how they deal with nudity, and they're like
Oh, I
allowing
don't.
nudity now. As long as it's not a public post, you can have nudity on your Patreon platform. So
Interesting.
yeah, so I'm
See,
actually
I
like
don't really.
rebooting mine as well because of that. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. I can like use this space like this
Yeah, I don't really do a bunch of nude stuff, but
now.
what Instagram considers nude and what TikTok considers acceptable is like
Yeah,
minimal.
yeah.
So, that's really exciting because there is some stuff I was a little bit curious about posting. It's not my own nudity, but it's like reviews that I've done on like nude websites. And so that's interesting. Like I had no idea. I just went away and like disconnected and came back to this great news.
Cool. All right. Well, awesome. This was fabulous. Thank you so much for joining me again, Blue. It was
Oh,
amazing to
thanks,
have
Alice.
you.
I'm so proud of your work and your vulva art. Like, you are amazing too.
Thanks. Thanks. Appreciate it. And the respect is mutual. I love you so much. And I can't wait to see you on Saturday.
I can't wait to see you. We'll do some tying.
Yes, 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 yes. So have a great day and a great rest of your week, and I will see you soon.
Thanks, baby. Bye.
Bye.